Vivek Ramaswamy, welcome to the Reagan Library.
It's great to be here.
Well, let's just dive right in. In 60 seconds or less, what does Ronald Reagan mean to you?
He was somebody who challenged orthodoxies of the country and of his own party, and I think that's what makes Ronald Reagan great. Sure, I agree with a lot of his policies, most of them, whose echoes I think we continue to enjoy today. But I think the thing that made him an extraordinary leader is that we forget how much of a true outsider he really was. Somebody who came from Hollywood with an actual vision for the country that was initially derided as unrealistic. To turn that into reality, that's the inspiration I take from Reagan.
President Reagan faced down an authoritarian regime that sought to change our way of life. He faced down a faltering economy and a sense among some that America's best days were behind her. What lessons from President Reagan's presidency do you see as most relevant to today?
I think one of the most important lessons is what he reflected on in his farewell speech in January of 1989, where he talked about reviving that national character that we lacked when we took office. And I think that is deeply relevant today. Yes, do we have our economic challenges? We do. Do we have our challenges of weakness on the global stage? We absolutely do. But that starts with a lack of fortitude here at home. And I think Reagan understood that better than most. When you know who you are, when you actually have revived your national character, then addressing those economic challenges and foreign policy challenges become that much easier. And I think Reagan embodied that in the way he led this country. One of the things I take away from him, one of the inspirations that I take, hopefully as the next president of the United States, is that the policies you implement, and he implemented some great policies, but the policies you implement are really just half the job. I think the other half of the job is the example that you set for the country through your actions, through how you comport yourself. And I think I take a lot of inspiration from Reagan, especially on the way he led this country through inspiration. And I think that's something we could use in the moment we're in today.
You recently said, quote, "The U.S. should evolve from Ronald Reagan's dictum of peace through strength to Vivek Ramaswamy's dictum of prosperity through peace," unquote. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I see this as part of a longer tradition, both in the United States and in the Republican Party. Abraham Lincoln famously said in 1863, I think it was, that the dogmas of a quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. I think Reagan actually embodied that. He didn't just recite slogans that came 40 years before him. He understood the unique challenges that he faced in his era. The challenges we face today are admittedly different than the challenges Ronald Reagan faced. When it comes to foreign policy in particular, the USSR doesn't exist anymore, but the Communist Party of China, the Communist Chinese Party, does. And it's different because now we depend on our enemy, from everything from the shoes on our feet to the phones in our pockets. And that was different from what we faced down with the USSR. And so I think about reviving Reagan's spirit, not just reciting his slogans by rote, but by reviving his spirit to awaken to the unique challenges we face today. And yes, I think the way we're going to achieve prosperity is through learning the lessons of the last 20 years in particular, where Reagan's dogma, I think, was in some ways ruined by a new generation of leaders in both parties that fought wars in places like Afghanistan and Iraq that didn't advance that American national interest, even as they recited Reagan's slogans by rote. And so I think the way we revive Reagan's spirit is now thinking about how we deliver prosperity through actual strength, yes, but delivering peace. And that's a big part of how I'll lead as Commander-in-Chief.
Let's talk or go more deeply about that sense of spirit, that sense of self. President Reagan spoke of America as a shining city on a hill. In America, as you look out across the land, is America today still that shining city? And what would you do as president to keep it shining brightly, not only for America, but for the world?
I think it can be. Reagan famously said it's morning in America. I believe in speaking truth, as Ronald Reagan did. I don't think it's morning in America right now, but it can be. Is the American dream alive and well right now? I'd say it's alive, but on life support. I think we're working within a short window of time, though, where we still can revive that country, that shining city on a hill, where we can look our kids in the eye and tell them, in good conscience, that the United States of America is still the country where no matter who you are or what your skin color is or how long your last name is, that you get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that, you know what, you're free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That American dream is real, but I do think we're going to have some work to do ahead of us to revive it. And I will say this too. I think it will take someone from a different generation, likely coming in from the outside of politics, as Ronald Reagan did, somebody whose best days are still yet ahead in life, to see a country whose best days are still yet ahead of itself. So do I believe our best days can still be ahead of us? Absolutely I do. But I'm not going to deny the hard work we're going to need to do in order to make that true. And that's why I'm pursuing what I am.
Of all the topics that are going to come up on the Reagan Library debate stage, what key issue do you want to make sure the American people hear from you about?
The revival of our national identity. Answering who we are as Americans, back to that revival of national character that Ronald Reagan spoke about 4 decades ago. I think that we have an opportunity to answer that question with conviction in a way that goes beyond black or white or Democrat or Republican even. I don't think that's the real divide in this country. I think the real divide in the country today is between the majority of us who love this country and the ideals that we're founded on, the ideals that Reagan so eloquently spoke of: free speech, prosperity, economic growth, meritocracy, the American dream, that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character. And a fringe minority in this country that rejects those ideals, that goes so far as to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals. That's the real divide in this country. And so what I hope everyone takes away from our debate tonight, not just from me, but I hope from every candidate on that stage, is a conviction in who we are as Americans. And once we're able to answer that question to my generation and younger, to revive that missing sense of national identity and pride in this country, then yes, I think our best days still will be ahead of us, and our economic challenges and our foreign policy challenges will be that much easier for us to address. And I'm volunteering to be the commander-in-chief who leads us there.
There are many candidates in this race.
Yeah.
Why should Republican primary voters vote for you?
I think it will take someone coming in from the outside, from a different generation, to reach that next generation. I know the American dream exists because I have lived it. My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. I have gone on to found multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. Did it while marrying my wife, raising our 2 sons, one of whom is getting a tour of the Air Force One that's upstairs right now. That's the American dream. And I am genuinely worried that that American dream isn't going to exist for our 2 sons and their generation unless we do something about it. And I think the Republican Party has fallen into a little bit of a trap. We want to make sure that we get out of that trap, but that trap is to point the finger at the other side, to point the finger at everything the radical left is doing wrong. And I've been guilty of this too, I have to admit that. But we have to now offer a vision of our own. And so I think the reason I'd like to ask people to support me is I'm not just running from something. I am running to something. I have taken on bureaucracies my entire life, from the bureaucracy of big pharma to the bureaucracy of the ESG industrial complex that infringes on our liberties today. Now I'm ready to take on the biggest bureaucracy of all. That's the bureaucracy in our federal government, the same one, by the way, that Ronald Reagan tamed when everyone told him he couldn't do it. That's the spirit I'm going to take when we tame this federal bureaucracy now once and for all.
Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you for your time. You're welcome back anytime at the Reagan Library. Appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.